I'm Ric Edelman, and this is The Truth About Money. On today's show,
you have decisions you have to make, and sometimes they're not the most prudent for your future.
What is a worker who works for a state or local government to do if they're 2 years away from retirement and may not have the full or no pension at all?
How do people make it today with the decline in the economy?
That's a very good question.
I know, that's why I asked it.
Yes.
The decisions that are made or that fail to be made in the next 3 to 5 years will largely determine whether America's future is better than its past. I believe we are approaching a tipping point. I believe that we can have a debt crisis in the United States.
That's all coming up right here, right now on The Truth About Money. Are you contributing the maximum to your retirement plan at work? We asked that question of people out on the street, and here's what they had to tell us.
Just couldn't afford to take that much out of my check at any one given time. I just need the money each week or every 2 weeks in order to survive.
Whatever you can contribute, you contribute. Whenever you can, you can.
I've been a single mother for the last 15 years. I have no savings, no money put apart.
You could of course not use it at all, not take advantage of it at all. You could do 6% up to 15% of your salary. I was able to do the 15%.
No, up to the max the match that my company does. I can't afford to max it out for the full $15,000 or whatever it is.
Well, it's a choice between maxing out your retirement at the moment and struggling strenuously to make the ends meet, make sure that everybody is cared for. It's an age-old story, especially if you're a single mom. You have decisions you have to make, and sometimes they're not the most prudent for your future.
I really don't think about it. It just kind of comes out of my check. I look at it, see it. I get a statement every month and see how much I have in there. So I don't think much about it. I hope it's enough when I retire, but at this point I just kind of do what I can.
According to the Employee Benefit Research Institute, the average American worker is only saving 6% of their pay in their company retirement plan, even though the maximum you're allowed to save is 15%. Why aren't you saving more? Well, the most common reason is that you simply don't think you can afford to. Well, I've got the solution for you. If you don't think you can afford to save 15% of your pay, no problem. Don't. But that doesn't mean that you should do zero. Instead, just do this. Just save 1% of your pay. If you earn $40,000 a year and you're paid twice a month, a 1% contribution is just $17 a paycheck. And Uncle Sam will cut your taxes by about a third, so putting $17 into the retirement plan really only cuts your paycheck by about $12. That's no big deal. You can afford that. In fact, maybe you can afford to do that so easily, you can afford to save 2% of your pay. That's $24 a paycheck. So that's what to do. Just contribute a little bit until the cut in pay hurts. When it hurts, stop. That means you're saving enough. Soon, though, it won't hurt anymore. You'll get used to the fact that your paycheck is a little smaller, and you won't notice. It won't hurt anymore. That's your cue to increase your contribution by another 1 or 2%. Pretty soon, you'll find that you're saving the maximum. Okay, maybe you're not convinced. Maybe you think that you really can't afford any cut in pay. Okay, then try this. Contribute nothing. But the next time you get a raise, put half the raise into the retirement plan. If your raise is $500, well, you never had that money before, so if you just put $250 or $20 a pay period into the plan, you won't miss it. Saving for retirement is remarkably easy. Never lament that you can't do more. Whatever you can do, do. You'll be amazed at how much of a difference this will make when you're ready to retire. One of the best parts about doing live seminars is the Q&A session. You never know what question is going to pop up. Here's an example.
What do you think of these films that have come out over the last couple of years describing the financial situation we've gone through? I have in mind Michael Moore's Capitalism. He shows what a derivative equation looks like. On the screens now, a documentary, Inside Job, and then of course Oliver Stone and money never sleeps.
What do I think about these films?
Yes.
They're entertaining, they're interesting, they're fun to talk about. I wouldn't allow any of them to color my investment decisions in the least.
Okay.
Currently, state and local governments are facing a fiscal crisis that's unprecedented, and that's going to affect municipal workers in ways that they had no way of anticipating. What is a worker who works for a state or local government to do if they're 2 years away from retirement and may not have the full or no pension at all?
Are you eligible for a pension right now?
This is my wife. She will be in, not yet, 2 more years.
Our advice to workers who are eligible for pension benefits now to take them. Quit working and take the benefit. Even though you were planning to work another year or two, quit now and grab the pension benefit while you can. We would extend this advice to union employees and even those in the federal government. And the reason we offer this advice is because of a simple political fact. The politicians are less likely to reduce benefits that current retirees are getting. They are more likely to reduce the benefits for those who are not yet retired. So quick, turn yourself into a retiree. You need to talk with a financial advisor to see, should you take the benefit even though it's reduced? What impact will that have on your life? And in many cases, you can go work somewhere else and double dip. Take the pension benefit now and go continue your career in another occupation with another employer and generate 2 incomes.
Thank you.
I said that once on the radio, and a couple of weeks later, I got a phone call to my office from a woman who said, my husband, a couple of weeks ago, quit his job and got a reduced pension, and now he has nothing to do. What is your address? Just thought I'd mention it. I asked my producers to find out what are the questions that people have out on the street. Well, instead of going to Boston in February, they insisted on going to Miami. Here's the question.
My question is, how do people make it today with the decline in the economy? You know, how do we make sure we really stay where we need to be in order to be successful for the next 10, 20 years?
Her observation is accurate and her perspective is perfect. And this is the thing that we really have to understand about money management. Making financial decisions about how to manage your money, your retirement account at work and such, that has nothing to do with what's going on right now in the economy. What really matters is where is the economy going, and not just over the next month or 6 months or even a year. What really matters is where is the economy going over the next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, because that's where you're going. It's the future that counts, not the present, and certainly not the recent past. And yet so many people make their investment decisions based on exactly that, the recent past. They fret over what has happened lately and assuming that whatever happened lately is what's going to happen in the future. You know, we had some pretty big snowstorms the past couple of winters, but I didn't see anybody predicting that it would be snowing in July. And yet when the stock market drops suddenly, people begin to wonder if it'll drop all the way to zero. We need to make sure we maintain the proper perspective. And so here's the simple answer to that very fundamental question. You want to have a long-term outlook, and to protect yourself against the risk that something might go wrong somewhere, you diversify. Don't put all of your money into stocks, and don't put it all into cash. Instead, invest in a wide variety of asset classes and market sectors. A highly diversified portfolio lowers your risk and gives you the best opportunity for getting competitive returns that will enable you to achieve your long-term goals. If you would like help in figuring out how you should allocate your assets, how you should slice your pie, I've got an easy way to help you. Just go to our website at thetruthAboutMoneyTV.com and check out our guide to portfolio selection. Here's what you've been waiting for, the chance to prove you're a financial whiz, our quiz of the day.
The stock market is called a leading economic indicator because It's one of the biggest parts of the economy. It's popular. It predicts future economic growth. None of the above.
Did you ever hear people say there's no such thing as a stupid question? Well, there is a stupid question. Only one, though. We talked about it recently on my radio show. Check this out. Money, you're listening to The Truth About Money. It's Ric Edelman with Branderson here in the studio. Anderson Wozni, Brandon Corso, and we're taking your calls. Gary's first up from Maryland. How are you, Gary?
Good morning, Mr. Edelman.
Great to talk with you.
I'm considering purchasing a condo in the Orlando area. I currently own 3 investment properties here in Montgomery County with positive cash flow. I carry like a zero balance on my credit cards, no car payments whatsoever. And I was considering using home equity from an investment property, but the closing fees for the property in Florida were kind of high. So I did some research with. I have a 403B with about $150,000 in it, and for me to take out $40,000, I would only be paying an application fee and 4.2% interest.
Well, wait. If you take money out of the 403B, you're going to make a withdrawal out of that account? Or you're going to borrow the money out?
I was going to borrow it. I have to pay it back within 5 years.
Right.
And that would be no problem. And in Florida right now, I can purchase there's quite a few properties under $40,000.
Gary, let me ask you a simple question. Why Florida? You already are an active real estate investor near where you live. Why do you want to go 1,000 miles away to buy property?
That's a very good question.
I know. That's why I asked it.
Yes. Well, because of the opportunity, I'm a long-term investor. I'm looking down the road like at 10 years or more.
Okay.
And I'm looking at 2-bedroom, 2-bath garden style, and I would have a real estate agent or a property management company manage it for me, and this would be a place like a second home.
Well, it's not a second home if it's going to be an investment property.
Well,
you're going to have
now,
a tenant living there, so you're not going to be able to live in it. You mean in the future you'll treat it like a second home?
Correct.
Okay, but have you done the math to figure out what the rental income will be, net of the costs of taxes, insurance, property management fees, maintenance and repairs, etc., in order to have a net profit that justifies the risk that you're going to be taking in doing this?
I've done some research.
One thing that I'm a little more comfortable about is the fact you are an experienced real estate investor. Too often people do this, right? And they have never done it before.
Right.
And all of a sudden they decide, hey, I'm going to go do this 1,000 miles away, and I've never bought real estate before, and they really have no idea. You at least have experience in investment real estate, and that gives me a lot of solace. But I'm still a little uncomfortable on 2 facts.
Yes.
One, that you're doing this 1,000 miles away. That is a speculation, Gary. The only reason you're thinking of doing this is that you believe you'll be able to make more money buying property in Florida than you'll be able to make buying property in your own backyard, right?
Correct.
And that is a bit of a concern because there's a real fundamental reason why Florida real estate is as cheap as it is. It's because of the horrible environment that they've been in through the real estate bubble and now the real estate busting of that bubble. And I'm not necessarily convinced that you're going to see prices recover over the next 10 years as fast as you're going to see them grow where you happen to live. So there's a speculative element to this, and the fact that you're 1,000 miles away makes it much more expensive to own investment real estate than it does in your backyard. You've got to pay the fee of a management company. You're going to incur the cost of travel. You're going to be paying for maintenance repairs you could otherwise have done yourself if it were in your own neighborhood. So it's more expensive and more risky and more speculative for all those reasons. There's a second concern that I have, and that is the fact you're talking about borrowing from your 403B. Brandon, what do you think of that?
Well, I think the 403B is a retirement account, Gary, and so if you take money out of it, you're going to have less money in that pot, and it can generate less money when you need the income in retirement. So
you're placing at risk your future retirement, hoping that the speculation works. Anderson?
Well, and also, Gary, one of the things that bothered me about your statement was you said I have to pay it back in 5 years, and that won't be a problem. How do you know that? Because if you were to happen to lose your job during that 5-year window.
Or if the guy in Florida doesn't pay rent on the property and he loses the rental income.
That loan could be due and payable immediately, in which case you may not be able to do it and you won't maybe be able to sell the property.
Got it. I understand. I didn't consider that about if I lost my job. And I guess there are high fees if you don't pay the money back.
Yes, it could be a lot more than you had bargained for.
Thank you, gentlemen. That's why I called you before, not after the fact.
I'm so glad you did. Oh, Gary gets the applause of the weekend. because how often do we got that call last week, didn't we?
Right.
From someone who said, "Oh, I just went and did this."
Was it a good idea?
It's
And
like-
Rick, as you've often said, there is only one stupid question, and that's the one.
Exactly right. Here's what I did. Should I have done it? Gary, you're the genius because you realize that you need to ask that question in advance rather than in hindsight.
The stock market is called a leading economic indicator because it predicts future economic growth.
David Walker has served presidents of both parties, been appointed by presidents of both parties, and has served as head of the Government Accountability Office as Comptroller General of the United States, the independent auditing and oversight arm of the United States Congress. And for the past 10 years or so, David, you have been harping on the fact that our federal budget debt, the deficit and the debt itself, are just way excessive, getting worse, and if we continue on this trend, we're going to be in a world of hurt. So I've got one serious question for you. Is anybody listening to anything that you're saying?
Rick, they are. And thank you for letting me be on the show. The fact is the American people get it. They're ahead of their...
No, wait. I know the American people get it. I mean, we all understand the need to live within our means, that don't use credit cards beyond our ability to repay. I know the American people get it. But does anybody who matters get it? Those who can control what it is we're doing with federal spending?
I think the answer is yes. We're hearing elected officials talk more about it, but obviously talk is not enough. We need to see action. You know, the president has, appointed a National Fiscal Responsibility and Reform Commission. They made a number of recommendations to deal with the structural deficit. We'll see what happens with those recommendations. The new Republican leadership is talking about the need to do something about spending, deficits, and debt. Now, whether or not something will be done is a different story. But as we all know, Washington is a lag indicator. And Congress is a lag indicator within Washington.
Meaning that Washington tends to react after the fact. They're a reactive body, not generally a proactive body.
That's correct. And typically what happens when you're talking about making difficult decisions and clearly putting our financial house in order and dealing with escalating deficits and debt involves a number of difficult decisions. They typically wait for a crisis to occur, which gives them cover to be able to make those tough choices.
But what are the action steps beyond the rally cry that you have been espousing for so many years? What is it that you're telling us we need to be doing specifically?
That ultimately we're going to have to make a lot of tough choices dealing with spending and taxes. Everything is going to have to be on the table. We have to recognize that it's taken us a number of years to get where we are. It's going to take us a number of years to get to where we need to be. My view is we need to do the following. First, we need to take a tough line on spending in 2011 and 2012. Discretionary spending has gone up about 30% between 2007 and 2010 with very low inflation. So we need to be able to take a tough line for the next couple of years, including for the base of defense spending. Secondly, we need to bring back the statutory budget controls that existed from the early 90s to 2002. And once they expired in 2002, things have been totally out of control. We need pay-as-you-go rules on both the spending and tax side without a bunch of loopholes. We need tough but realistic discretionary spending caps. And very importantly, we need debt to GDP targets starting in 2013 or 2014, that if we don't hit those targets, things will automatically happen. Automatic spending cuts and tax surcharges that will be transparent and that will facilitate accountability.
Well, my concern with that, though, is that in many environments, it is because of a reduction in GDP that forces the government to increase its spending. Look at 2008 as a perfect example of this, that when you're in the middle of the storm and consumers and corporations have cut back dramatically their spending, the last thing you want to do is pile on by having the government also retract. So shouldn't there be some disconnection to a degree of saying that in the middle of a storm, that's when we release the normal standards as opposed to tightening them up?
I agree, Rick, and that's why I believe that people need to understand the difference between the short-term deficits and the structural deficits. The short-term deficits, the ones that we have today, are largely due to temporary factors. A recession combined with a slow economic recovery, high unemployment, 2 undeclared and unfinanced wars, a range of bailouts and stimulus efforts, temporary tax cuts. Those don't represent the real threat. They will pass in various times. The real threat is the deficits and debt we'll have after all those issues pass.
Predominantly from Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, unfunded pension liabilities and the like.
Predominantly because of health care. Medicare is obviously number one. Medicaid, underfunded pension, retiree health. Social Security is a challenge. It's underfunded about $8 trillion, but that's a small fraction of Medicare's underfunding and a lot easier to solve if we get a little bit of leadership.
Is this struggle going to experience a shift, the so-called tipping point, or are we going to continue in this muck for an indefinite period?
Well, my view is that the decisions that are made or that fail to be made in the next 3 to 5 years will largely determine whether America's future is better than its past. I believe we are approaching a tipping point. I believe that we can have a debt crisis in the United States. We have to recognize that the principles and values under which this country was founded have been strayed from. That includes opportunity rather than entitlement, thrift, savings, limited debt, and stewardship. We've strayed for those. We need to come back to that if we want our future to be better than our past. And we've got to have a plan, and we need to start implementing that plan in phases over time. At the Come Back America Initiative, I'm working on a Plan A and a Plan B. Plan A is, what do we need to do in a reasoned and responsible fashion, phased in over time, to put our finances in order and avoid a debt crisis in the United States. Plan B is, what do we do if we have a debt crisis and we're going to have to stabilize markets within a matter of days in order to prevent a global depression. And so the fact is that, the jury's out on which one it's going to be.
In one sense, you're running around screaming that a fox is coming, and you're scaring a lot of people. Some people need to be scared. The policymakers need to be paying attention to this. But other folks, or a lot of people watching this interview right now, don't know a lot about money. They're not that sophisticated about personal finance issues and economics. All they hear is you using the word global depression in a couple of years, and it can sound really rather startling and scary. So sure. Tell me if you're really envisioning that kind of an Armageddon scenario, or is this really one of key policy making that determines whether we are merely below average versus above average, or thrown out of class?
Well, first, I've been referred to by many as the Paul Revere for fiscal responsibility. And Paul
I would
Revere
agree with agree with that
so
description.
I'm trying to be constructive. Look, my view is we can, we must, and I believe we will ultimately take the steps necessary to avoid a debt crisis and a global depression. But we're not going to do it unless I and others continue to have the clarion call, unless the first 3 words of the Constitution come alive, we the people. Because the fact is we know that Congress typically doesn't act and elected officials don't act unless there's a crisis. We can't afford to have a debt crisis.
You are sort of like the guy outside banging on the door, not only hoping that people will listen, but frankly hoping that they'll let you in to have a conversation with them. Have you given any thought to joining the party and opening that door and walking in, becoming a candidate yourself for political office?
I do not have any current plans to run for office. I've had a number of people who have sought me to run for office. In particular, a number of people are encouraging me to run for the Senate in Connecticut. But I don't have any current plans to run, and I've got plenty of time to be able to make that decision.
So that's the classic not a no scenario.
It's an honest answer.
Okay. David Walker, former Comptroller General of the United States, thanks so much for being with us. We're going to bring you part 2 of this interview with David Walker. So stay tuned for a future episode of The Truth About Money for more with David Walker. Before we go, talk to your kids about money. Yeah, I know, the idea probably makes you feel uncomfortable. 7 out of 10 parents say that they'd rather talk to their kids about drugs or sex than money, according to a recent study. The truth is, though, children learn the most about money by watching you. So even if you're struggling with money, even if you don't know much about it, talk with your kids about saving. Learn how by visiting jumpstart.org for lots of free information that can help you talk to your kids about money. And that's The Truth About Money. I'm Ric Edelman. Thanks for watching.